my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide, and yep, today we are doing the in-depth review of the Remarkable Paper Pure. As you've already seen, probably, hopefully, in my first impressions video, Remarkable Paper Pure is a long-awaited device because the last equivalent to it that we've had before was the Remarkable 2, which came out in September of 2020. So it was a 6-year-long wait for the Remarkable to actually return to its roots, so to say. But the reception to the Remarkable Paper Pure was not so warm, shall we say. Why is that? Well, from your comments and from my own impressions as well, it's simply because it failed to meet the mark of expectations and standards that we have today, specifically in the screen resolution, because even after 6 years of waiting, we again have a 10.3-inch screen at 226 or 7 ppi, depending on how you are counting, which is exactly the same type of resolution that we've had on Remarkable 2, and even worse, it's exactly the same type of resolution that we had on the original Remarkable 1 from back in 2017. To make things even more complicated for the Remarkable Paper Pure, it is now adopting the newly introduced active pen and stylus from the Remarkable Paper Pro series and Paper Pro Move. So we're moving from the EMR stylus, which allowed users the freedom of using their own nibs, their own pens and things like that. That is no longer the case. And even more so, the active pen that's being used on Remarkable Paper Pure is of their own design and it's using their own driver, which means that even though technically it is a USI pen, you can't really use any other replacement pen, which means that with Remarkable Paper Pure, you are locked down to that pen, to those nibs, and they are not perfect. They're good, and some people will like them, other people's might not. So it's a further lockdown of a platform that was more free before. Another thing that users have reacted to is the fact that Remarkable Pure, Paper Pure, is now largely a plastic device, a departure from sexy, sleek, and prestige type of hardware looking that we've had from Remarkable 2, Remarkable Paper Pro, and Remarkable Paper Pro Move. And there was quite a lot of comments expressed regarding the departure from a flipbook cover to a sleeve type of cover. So putting all of these different things together, it's not exactly what the core Remarkable audience was hoping for or maybe even waiting for. But Remarkable Pure or Paper Pure is what we've got after a 6-year-long wait. So I've spent quite a bit of time now with this device, and I've used it in various different situations, and I've put it through the DAF Display Analysis framework, and this is like a more objective type of look at this device. For a more subjective type of a look, if you haven't watched yet, that's what the first impressions video is for. So if you haven't watched that, I do invite you to check that out also after watching this video. But before going into all of that, I'm going to give you my, upfront analysis and opinion of the device. Even though it is being criticized and things like that, and while certainly the 300 ppi thing doesn't make sense, especially at the price point and the fact that this is now a standard, and Remarkable Paper Pure is below that standard. If you're coming from Remarkable 2 and you're looking to maybe upgrade to Remarkable Paper Pure, the Pure versus 2 is an improvement with the exception of the writing feel, mainly because of that new pen. So if you're not a fan of the Remarkable Paper Pro and Paper Pro Move pen writing and feel, then that is a thing that you will not be a fan of either on the Paper Pure, and you won't be able to change that. And while not maybe all of the categories are a measurable step up or a significant step up compared to Remarkable 2, which is definitely not a good thing after 6 years, but on the whole, it does represent an upgrade. Whether it's an upgrade that you wanted, whether it's an upgrade that you think is worth it, that's totally up to you, but it is an upgrade. The design of the Paper Pure is definitely remaining in their paper family, which means that it's gonna have that very similar type of design like the Paper Pro and the Paper Pro Move, except that this time it's not that exclusive and ooh-ah type of manufacturing and styling, mainly because it's not using a metal type of a body. We have a plastic on the outside, plastic on the sides, and of course the same type of glass screen on front. The design has lost the chin, and we have an equal bezel on all of the sides of the device, which lends itself really well for landscape work. Particularly would have lended itself really well for the type folio were it not for the fact that Paper Pure does not have pogo pins anywhere exposed, which basically means that there will not be a type folio accessory for the Paper Pure, which makes zero sense to me because it's the first device that actually can work properly in landscape format because of those equal bezels. Go figure. It is no longer the pursuit of the thinnest device like we've had Remarkable 2. It's about 1 millimeter thicker than Remarkable 2, but because it's a plastic build and a little bit of a smaller footprint, it's actually weighing at around 360 grams, which makes it considerably lighter than the Remarkable 2. It makes it nicer to hold in the hand and kind of deal with the device itself, and because it's not made out of these, you know, precious metals and things like that, it does free you up a little bit as a user, actually a considerable amount, when using a device like that. No, it doesn't feel premium like Remarkable 2, Remarkable Paper Pro, or Remarkable Paper Pro Move. No, it doesn't mean that it's built badly at all. It's built actually really well, but it's built to a budget, and that's how it feels. The plastic itself, I prefer the quality of the plastic that we have, for example, on Supernote Manta, because it feels nicer, it feels better in the hand, it feels a little bit softer and sounds nicer under the hand. The plastics here on the Paper Pure are a little bit harder for my taste, and that means that it's going to always have that type of a tactile feel that, to me personally, feels a little bit cheap. And this, while I know that Remarkable are proud of hitting a price point of $400 for the device in the basic marker and $450 for the device advanced marker and the sleeve folio, it's still $450, and $450 for something that feels like this, and it's 226 ppi type of a technology, and it's, you know, the similar writing latency like the Remarkable 2. For me, the design is good and the build quality is good and the price point is good, but the device somehow doesn't really feel like $450. I'm not really sure if that's me, but once people start getting the device into their own hands, I hope that I will get some more opinion as well so that I can see the impressions. It's not a bad device at all, it just somehow doesn't feel like $450, and it's not just because it's plastic, it's the type of plastic as well. Again, Supernote Manta is plastic, but it feels like a much higher quality product than the Paper Pure does. But then again, it does cost a lot more as well. So Remarkable is a reader and writer combined device, primarily because of the user interface and things like that. It's meant as a writer device or an e-notebook primarily, but it can function as an e-reader too. As an e-reader in ebooks, like, just look elsewhere. That functionality is still broken on this one, so it doesn't really work that well. Functions, but it's really bad. But for document reading and markup and things like that, that's something that genuinely is an okay area to use the Remarkable device as an e-reader type of thing. And in that category, Remarkable Paper Pure is performing quite well. We have significant increase in responsiveness when flipping pages. Ghosting is a lot better than it was before, and the overall rendering of the black colors is overall good. unless it's actually interfering with the reflectivity or the diffusion of the reflections that we have on the panel. Because underneath that glass panel, yes, I genuinely think that we do have a good screen there that can perform really well. It's just a shame that on top of it we have a glass that has been roughened up to this point of giving you really nice and raspy writing surface, but that also has a profound effect on the reflectivity aspects. And diffusion of reflections is excellent, don't get me wrong, but it's spread out over a really large area of the screen, and that is absolutely noticeable when viewing darker type of content with a reflection point. So you do have to kind of navigate here and there, and it's a little bit more difficult because any point of reflection is going to take up quite a big area of the screen. However, that matters only for darker content. So it's not a huge deal, but it's just a shame that it's there because it's masking what's otherwise a really, really good rendering of black content, which was always a weakness for Remarkable devices. Now, Remarkable also claims that the panel they have here is the whitest one that they've ever produced. I can't see what are they talking about here, because in subjective, uncontrolled comparisons or controlled comparisons, like any way that I look at it and compare it to the Remarkable 2, the whiteness is pretty much exactly the same. I have no idea what that claim is about. The black content under good conditions and not glaring is actually darker, genuinely so, but the whiteness, no, not really. Rendering of the characters and clarity of the characters is really good. You have nice readability for a 227 ppi screen. It's not going to be as nice as a 300 ppi screen, and another claim from Remarkable as well is that it's like, yeah, we've done these things on rendering content so that you don't notice if it's going to be a 226 or 300 ppi panel. That's not true for the reader side of things, at the very least. On the e-notebook side of things, they've implemented anti-aliasing, which may be true to an extent, but I'm going to talk about that in the e-notebook section. For the reader, you definitely see that it's a 227 ppi panel, and no, you cannot mistake it for a 300 ppi panel at all. Speaking of writing performance and e-notebook performance, well, this is the dominant side of this device, and this is the make or break. This is where it absolutely has to shine. And largely the news is good here, mainly because, again, rendering of that black color is better, unless you're, obstructed by the glare. And that increases the stroke contrast and the readability of things. Then we have okay writing latency at around 20-ish milliseconds. They're claiming 21 milliseconds, and my tests have confirmed that. A little bit faster than Remarkable 2. Remarkable 2 was also claiming 21 milliseconds. It never reached that. It was 25 milliseconds. So it is a little bit faster, but again, it's nowhere near the writing latency speeds of Paper Pro and Paper Pro Move, which are using the same type of active pen. However, the biggest impact on the writing impressions here and the writing quality is the introduction of the anti-aliasing and post-processing of the written strokes, and finally Paper Pure has that. So if you actually write on Remarkable Paper Pure, it is no longer going to be jaggedy and ugly and like blech, as it was on Remarkable 2, because it really was for a really long time not nice type of end results. This is no longer the case, so that's genuinely improved on the Remarkable Paper Pure. And here somebody could maybe in some situations make an argument that an unprocessed 300 ppi stroke is going to look the same or worse than the anti-aliased processed stroke on the Paper Pure. But if you had the same type of anti-aliasing and the same type of stroke rendered on a 300 ppi versus on a 227 ppi of Paper Pure, you would still see the difference. So there's no way around it. Does it look better than Remarkable 2? Yes, it does. both in reading and both in writing, and that is the point that matters a lot. If you want to compare it to a 300 ppi, does it look better than a 300 ppi? For the most part, no. Overall performance of the device in writing is actually quite good, but one thing that you absolutely have to be aware of is that the new pen is a very divisive type of thing. Well, it's no longer that new because we've had it now for a year. So unless you've used and you know how Remarkable Paper Pro and Paper Pro Move feels, the best way to describe it is once you do make a contact with the screen and you start drawing and creating lines, the tactile feel is gorgeous. Really, really gorgeous. Like, no question about it. I prefer it over the old Remarkable 2 feel vastly. But there is this hardness of the nib, and that initial contact is clacky, and you do feel those vibrations. That's an unpleasant thing for me, and I know for a lot of other people as well. Some people say, hey, we get used to it and it's all fine, which is a great thing to hear, and maybe it applies to you as well. But you absolutely have to be aware that the writing experience of that pen and the surface of the screen is not really that straightforward, because you have quite a bit of an ambivalence here with the clackiness as a negative thing and hardness, and the writing stroke feel as a really strong positive. And another thing that you have to be aware of, it's custom nibs, only one type of nibs, only hard nibs, and they are rather large at their tip. They are not that sharp, and even if they were sharp, they would spend really, really quickly. And also the nature and the shape of these nibs is very different to the old traditional felt nibs. So as these spend, they spend under different angles, and because of the hardness of the material, it becomes less usable more it's spent. And they are more expensive as well. So to me personally, it doesn't make sense to pair your premium pen and your premium whatever thing with really expensive nibs, with all of that kind of bells and whistles, with a device that you want to market and sell as your budget kind of oriented device. This would have made far more sense that that it had an EMR panel and that it could use EMR pens so that people could use their own felt nib pens and, you know, provide a more economical solution than what you actually are forced to do here, which is kind of bizarre because you have, you know, plastic device, everything's built to a budget, built nicely, but to a budget, and then you have these like super luxurious nibs and stuff that's quickly going to add up cost over frequent use of this device, which doesn't seem harmonious to me, at least. Overall navigation of the device is really good, so performance is quite good over the menus, and it's one of the fastest performing, if not the fastest performing Remarkable device. Even though technically speaking Remarkable Paper Pro is more powerful, and I'm sure that internally it can do things quicker, but we can't really see those things because it's paired, again, you know, counterintuitively with a much slower panel. So even though it can do things much more quickly, you as a user, you're going to end up waiting for that panel to finish doing its blinky kind of thing. Here we have a little bit more in line of a balancing kind of thing. And for the performance of the panel, which is really good, again, refresh speeds, deghosting and everything, I think that the SoC, even though it's you know, 2-core and 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, it's paired well, and with the custom Linux OS that they are using, it's able to actually kind of keep up. So it's a well-balanced device, and it doesn't feel sluggish or that anyone is kind of waiting for the bottleneck at any point in time. That being said, I think that 2 gigabytes of RAM is way too little for any kind of a larger type of a document, and I'm absolutely certain that you will run into those issues if you're dealing with really large documents, or you have really big notebooks with a lot of pages over a ton of time, or you have tons of strokes if you are drawing. 2 gigs of RAM is half of what this device needs, my opinion at least. Alright, so that's a general overview of what you can expect from the Paper Pure, in fact. And now let's proceed with the DAF methodology and analysis. And what is DAF? Well, it's a display analysis framework that I've developed over the whole past year and a half. So I first introduced it like a year and a half ago, and over the course of time, I've been now testing and refining this methodology quite a bit. And recently, I've collected enough data points, and over 30 devices have been tested, and that gives me enough of a range to understand what the ranges are, how the methodology behaves, to test it out, to bug fix and fine-tune it. And recently I've undergone a major tightening up, recalibration and everything of the DAF methodology, getting it ready to finally be published and basically public. It's not yet, but it's a major step in getting there. And also I've optimized things, I've cut things out that I felt were no longer needed, and all of that kind of stuff. So this DAF analysis is a slightly different one, and you may notice some slight differentiations in numbers of the previously tested devices, and I just wanted to kind of explain why that is the case, because the methodology has been recalibrated to give even more precise and more meaningful range of where e-paper devices actually, in actuality, lie when they are tested. So let's proceed with the DAF testing of Remarkable Paper Pure. Let's start with the readability for the Remarkable Paper Pure. And we're checking out the standard fonts at 100% blackness. We can see that the Remarkable Paper Pure is performing quite well. In fact, it's nothing really outstanding. For a 227 ppi panel. What does that mean? Well, that means that you can see that even at 100%, when we drop down to 6 points, you are starting to lose a little bit of details here. Now, the Pure is doing an excellent job at actually maintaining consistency and coherence of it, but it just has a physically limited resolution. When we're stepping down the intensity, so down to 70% of blackness, it's remaining fairly readable and cohesive, and it's pretty much good at 50% as well. Going to thin fonts at 100%, this is where the challenge is going to be, but we can see that the calibration is actually quite good. We do have still Remarkable is kind of, yeah, not able to fully resolve the black pixels in some way, because you can see that some of the lines are a little bit pure black, and then the rest of it is actually more gray than black. And yeah, I don't know exactly why it's doing that, but we can definitely see that, for example, on the letter B here, and yeah, the dots here at the N and things like that. But overall, at 100% thin fonts, it's readable. And even when we go down to 50% at thin fonts, I think it's pretty much readable for 10 points and 16 points, and it's legible for 6 points. So overall, this is a good performance out of Pure. Thick fonts are okay in the big sizes. In the small size, we're starting to have quite a bit of bleed here, making it look almost out of focus, but the focus is locked. So that's not the camera, it's actually the bleed of the screen itself and lack of the ability to form straight lines at such a small font size. You can clearly see it here at the edge of the A. So that's why the test is there, but I predict that if we step down to 50%, it's going to be a bit more cleaner, which it is, albeit, yeah, again, at 6 points, 227 or 226 ppi, it's just so many cells that it has to work with, so that's what we get. Contrast and uniformity is okay, but we do see something fairly important about the characteristics of the surface of the screen, at least, or the screen protector. glass on the Pure. If we focus on the white color, we can see that we have 73, 51, 31. So dropping by 20 points when we're going from excellent lighting conditions to average to poor lighting conditions. That is a good overall performance. Black is a little bit of a different story. When it's pure black, that you can actually see unomitted pure black color, it's a really, really good color. But the DAF test is actually measuring out not a pixel value, but an overall value and performance of the screen. And that's why it's actually taking a little bit of a chunk of a screen and then measuring out what can we see in a chunk itself. The blackness here is, I think, interrupted by the overly diffuse panel on top of the screen. So while I expect that it's going to produce really good reflectivity results in the reflection portion of the test, we can clearly see here when testing black in excellent lighting conditions that while the reflection is not going to be sharp, it's diffused very, very clearly, but it's diffused over such a large area that it actually affects even the center of the screen, which is what is captured here. So that is an unusual thing to see, but definitely an important one to consider, because while the panel itself may be, blacker or whiter or anything like that, once you put that screen underneath a surface that has other physical properties, what you end up actually seeing is going to be different. And that's the case here with the remarkable Paper Pure, because the surface on top of the screen, the glass that we have for excellent writing conditions, as you can see, we can see the bumpiness in the reflections here. So it's a good writing surface, but it does interfere with the image quality for sure. And here we have the exact continuation of this story. So the reflectivity is excellent, and it basically diffuses the edge completely. This is the edge of a ring light, and it's like a really, really sharp edge. And you can see that it's diffused over an enormous area. But while that's really, really good for diffusing reflections, that means that very, very large distance and area from the reflection itself is going to be affected by it, because we're going to have a huge diffusion area here very, very softly. I mean, it's not even fading out completely down to here. So it's an excellent diffusion performance, and we have quite a good intensity as a consequence of that, because more you diffuse, less intensity is bounced back. That makes sense. So that aspect is good, but as we've seen in the contrast and uniformity, it does interfere with the dark content on this device. When talking about the surface roughness of the screen, we have quite good values here at 1.124 of the surface roughness index here. And much more importantly, the profile roughness here is quite non-uniform, and we have quite a healthy gap and differentiation between different peaks, and a lot of enough room between the peaks here for the tip of the stylus to actually fall into all of this. Now, granted, the tip of the stylus on the remarkable Paper Pure is rather large, so if it was a more sharper type of a nib, I think that we would have even better type of writing feel, simply because the profile curve of the surface of the screen that you're writing on is really, really good. And that reflects in the real world performance as well. When you're writing on this device, it just feels quite good. Writing latency on the Paper Pure is quite good at around 21 milliseconds. However, that used to be the claimed writing latency speed of the Remarkable 2, which is now 6 years old. Granted, Remarkable 2 never actually reached that number, so it was always slower, around 25, 26 milliseconds. So this one actually is hovering at around 21 milliseconds. But coming from other Remarkable Paper Pro devices, Paper Pro and Paper Pro Move, which are sub 10 millisecond writing latency speeds, Well, yeah, this feels like a step down, especially because it's using the same technology. You're, doing the same type of compromises of the pen, active stylus, nib, and all of that kind of stuff, yet you don't really get the benefit of the writing latency speeds. Surface to screen distance is actually improved. So now we have, for the first time ever, around 0.7-ish, maybe 72 or something like that, but it seems to be around 0.7 millimeters of distance between the surface of the screen and the screen itself, which is a really, really good thing to see, because previously Remarkable 2 had at around 0.9, I think, and the Paper Pro and Pro Move were also around 95, but they had a front light in there as well. This one obviously doesn't have a front light, so we are reaping some benefits of that here in the screen to surface distance. Refresh time is actually quite good for a Remarkable device. So it's nothing really spectacular at 404.57 milliseconds. So we're still talking about, considerable amount of time for a complex image to fully clear up into a blank page. But it's not catastrophic, it's not great, it's kind of in a meh kind of category. But what I've seen on Remarkable Pure when flipping through pages, it's the overall responsiveness, and while it may not clear out everything, the device is responsive enough for you to actually start interacting with it, even if it's not fully finished with the refresh. So this doesn't mean that you need to wait the full 404 milliseconds between flipping a page. On the contrary, you can interact with the device much more quickly, but you will have to wait those 400-ish milliseconds if you want to see a fully cleared page. Ghosting performance is surprisingly good on the Remarkable Pure, either with the pure text content, graphics content, or the combined. It was able to very successfully clear out the contents of the images, and that is a really nice thing to actually see, because it's a considerable improvement from the previous Remarkable devices. Battery life is okay, so we have an estimation of around 50 hours of continuous reading time per charge, and around 16.67 hours of continuous writing time on the Remarkable Pure. This is definitely better than anything else that we've had before from Remarkable devices. I think we will do the comparison, and then I'll see how it compares to Remarkable 1 and 2. But to my recollection, this I think is much better performance. I'm not sure about the reading, but the writing definitely seems like an improvement in performance, which makes sense because Pure has a larger battery. And finally, let's check out how the Remarkable Pure compares to the Remarkable 1 and Remarkable 2 in the same categories in the Display Analysis Framework, or the DAF. Remember, all of these are 226 ppi panels, and Remarkable has claimed that the Pure has the whitest screen, or the whitest white, of any Remarkable device before. So let's check out how it stacks up against its predecessors. So we have blue is Remarkable 1, orange is Remarkable 2, and red is Remarkable Paper Pure. And we can see that in the overall readability scoring, Pure and Remarkable 2 are remarkably scoring exactly the same. This is really rare to happen, but it did happen. However, neither of them is actually outperforming the now 9-year-old Remarkable 1 in pure readability. So let's see, where did Remarkable 1 pull ahead against these newer devices. So we have in standard fonts, it is slightly better. They are very close to each other, like really close to each other, but Remarkable 1 does pull ahead a little bit. In thin fonts, it has actually a significant advantage over both Remarkable 2 and the Pure, and we can see that the Pure is actually lagging a little bit behind by the Remarkable 2 in rendering of the thin fonts. It's only in the thick fonts rendering that we see that the tables turn around and that, Remarkable 1, 2, 3, we have the kind of, ascending order of things. But overall, that's not enough to actually beat Remarkable 2 nor Remarkable 1 in readability. Contrast and uniformity is a bit of a different story, but not what we've come to expect from the claims of Remarkable, because if it was the brightest screen that they've ever made, we should have seen that in the contrast itself. And actually, Remarkable Pure underperforms under Remarkable 2. Maybe the panel itself, underneath that glass, maybe it is more contrasty and everything, but that's of no use to you as a user if you have that surface on top, which is very nice to write on, but it diffuses those reflections very, very strongly, and therefore it affects both whites and black colors, which we will actually, I think this warrants a much closer look. So that's something that we're going to do now. I'm just going to go through all of this so we can see what we have as results. As far as uniformity goes, that's where the newer panel is much better than both the Remarkable 2 or Remarkable 1. But that's a minor type of a thing, so it does give it some bump and some advantage, but it's not enough to overall defeat the Remarkable 2. So what you can say for the Remarkable Pure is that in real-world contrast and uniformity situations, it's, all things considered, it's kind of like Remarkable 2. And let's compare directly the contrast and uniformity test between Remarkable 2 on the left-hand side here and Paper Pure on the right-hand side. And we can immediately see in the rendering of the black colors that interference of the diffusion of the panel on top of the glass on top of the screen, because you can see how much it actually bleeds into the black color, which is not something that we've had on Remarkable 2. As far as the values themselves go, well, let's see. Under excellent lighting conditions, Remarkable 2 had the whiteness score of 72, and Remarkable Paper Pure had the whiteness score of 73. Let's see, maybe it changes in poorer lighting conditions. So in average lighting conditions, we have a whiteness of 0.5 on Remarkable 2, 51 on Pure, and we have 3 and 31 in poor lighting conditions. At best, just a technical advantage in whiteness that you can claim for Pure. So that claim doesn't really check out in real-world measurable results. What about the blackness? How it is affected by that? We already know that when I subjectively look at the content of the Remarkable Pure, the blacks do appear darker. So that's for sure. However, that's only if I'm looking at it at a specific angle and I don't have any reflections kind of battling with that darkness. And that's something that after my first impressions, when I started using the device more, it's something that I started noticing. So I'm actually happy that that creeped into these results. I wasn't sure that it would, but it did. So that's a good thing because we can have a measurable difference here. And underneath that protective glass layer, I am absolutely certain that Remarkable Pure is rendering darker blacks than Remarkable 2. But the end result is that, under excellent lighting conditions, Remarkable 2 scores blackness of 0.46, while we have 35 on Pure. In average lighting conditions, we got 7 versus 66, again lower on Pure. And then in poor lighting conditions, we got 84 versus 81. So finally, when we lower the lighting so much that the reflectivity kind of granularity doesn't interfere with the darkness, then we're starting to kind of equalize with Remarkable 2. But in all other conditions, that diffusion of reflections and granularity of reflections, it's going to interfere with the dark content, and that's directly reflected on the contrast as well. All right, let's move on to, well, not color accuracy because there's a black and white devices, but reflectivity. We have not a surprise at all that Pure outperforms every single one of them in diffusion of the reflections at 90.78. That's a crazy score. The intensity is actually a little bit higher than what I would expect for this amount of diffusion, and that actually leads to a marginal, but it does ever so slightly eke out ahead of Remarkable Pure's performance of reflectivity. However, the two have similar but different type of a character of reflectivity, and yeah, that as we've seen can have an effect on other areas of the device too. Ghosting performance, higher is better, and we have actually finally an area where Remarkable Pure and its, no newer type of technology is outperforming significantly both Remarkable 1 and Remarkable 2, almost by 30%. That's a big deal, and we've seen that also in the images. Surface roughness, I'm really happy to see that it's come back to the levels of Remarkable 1, which is a really cool thing to see. I've never fully liked Remarkable 2. It was too glassy, too slippery, especially when coming from Remarkable 1. So this is a really nice change to see that the surface roughness is of a very, very similar character like the Remarkable 1, and in fact it's ever so slightly more rougher or more paper-like than Remarkable 1. It's a shame that it's not paired with the freedom of an EMR pen and those softer felt nib, nibs, because then you don't have the clackiness and the hardness of the new nibs. So just imagine how nice it would feel if you didn't have to use that active pen. Refresh time, newer panel, newer technology, and it outperforms. This is where obviously Remarkable 1 is lagging behind severely because it's the slowest of them all. Then we have Remarkable 2 and Remarkable Pure, even faster than Remarkable 2. Similar story continues with the writing latency. So we have almost 50 milliseconds for Remarkable 1, then 26.28 on Remarkable 2, and 21.27 on Remarkable Pure. This time they've claimed 21 milliseconds. We can measure 21 milliseconds, and that's a good thing. But as I already mentioned, where's the gain of going to that active pen? We've lost that. Surface distance has also been improved. Remember, all three of these devices are without a front light, and we have 0.95 millimeters on Remarkable 1, then down to 0.9-ish on Remarkable 2, and around 0.7 millimeters on Remarkable Pure. And battery life as well. Yes, it outperforms both Remarkable 1 and Remarkable 2 by a considerable margin. So their claims that the Remarkable Pure will have better battery life than the others is pretty much there. So that all means that in the final DAF results, we have, well, this is quite interesting because we have like an almost equal kind of a bump between the generations. So we have Remarkable 1, 2, and 3, and that's how they go. So 1, 2, and 3 in overall ranking. Is an e-reader. Remarkable 1 and 2 were roughly the same type of performance, because in e-reader category, different categories are weighed differently and they matter more. But we can see that because of the better refresh time and especially ghosting, that actually Remarkable Pure is scoring higher as a purely e-reader type of a device. As an e-notebook, it just makes sense that it's also going to perform better because it has lower surface to screen distance, it has faster writing latency, and it has an excellent writing surface as well, combined with other parameters, which means that it outperforms both of these devices as well overall. And neither of these devices are well suited as an e-tablet, but the newer screen technology, the improvements in ghosting, the distance from screen to surface, and battery life, and all that kind of stuff actually edges out Remarkable Pure to score ahead of Remarkable 2. It's interesting to see how they've battled through all of this, and if we're looking at Remarkable in isolation, so not against other brands, Remarkable Pure is a step forward overall. Not in all categories that we've seen, but if compared to Remarkable 2 and not to Paper Pro families, even though it's called Paper, so it's kind of weird, but okay. If we make that mental jump, then we can measurably see that Remarkable Pure is, in fact, a step forward. So that's the Remarkable Paper Pure. I think that it is, and it does represent jump and an improvement when compared to Remarkable 2. Does it represent a 6-year worth of weight? No. In my opinion, absolutely not. It should have had a 300 ppi screen, and it should have had pogo pins so that you can actually expect to see what you've had on Remarkable 2 and Remarkable Paper Pro. I absolutely don't see a reason why the type folio, which was like such a big thing that was introduced, will be completely cut out of Remarkable Paper Pure, especially when we're taking into consideration that their last equivalent model lasted like for 6 years, and that's what Remarkable is all about. So unless they truly decide to unlock the currently locked Bluetooth functionality, all of these devices, most of these devices actually have a Bluetooth receiver in there. So they are Bluetooth capable. That's just locked out and you can't use it. So you can't use your own Bluetooth keyboard. So unless Remarkable plans to unlock that and give you access for using, freedom of your own keyboard, which would be the first for Remarkable, I really wouldn't hold my breath for that. That means that you won't be able to use your Remarkable Paper Pure as a replacement for Remarkable 2 if what you relied on was the type folio. That, to me, is a very strange decision. I'm interested to hear what you say in the comments down below and how that seems to you. Overall, I think that it's a nice device, but a little bit too expensive. If it was $100 less, it would be a no-brainer to recommend. Absolutely. So if you could get it like for $300 with a basic marker, that would be awesome. And then 227 ppi doesn't matter, lack of pogo pins doesn't matter, the plastic build doesn't matter, it's $300, you get a ton for that, it's fantastic. And if it was, I don't know, 370 or something, like just a smidge under 399, so it's like even 389 for the device premium pen and the folio, I think still that would be a much easier sell of the device, and because it represents an upgrade for a very reasonable price, and it just kind of makes sense. Okay, so it feels a little bit budget, but you spend way less money on it. So that's great. Granted, you are spending way less money on it now than you have spent on the Remarkable 2 when it came out. Absolutely, that's true. But in today's environment of e-paper devices, Remarkable Paper Pure is no longer competing just with the Remarkable 2, and that's where this whole thing starts to shake a lot. I mean, the obvious problem here is Books Go 10.3 Gen 2. It's cheaper and more performant in pretty much almost every aspect. I think writing latency is slower and the writing feel is not as good and things like that. So of course you get like a ton of books related calamities that go with it, but you are going to get 300 ppi, you are going to get better contrast, better refresh, you're going to get more modern technology, you're going to get more power, more storage, more RAM, more cores, more freedom with the Google Play and all that kind of stuff, if that's what you're looking for. So if you're content to remain in your Remarkable ecosystem and all you ever wanted was just your Remarkable 2 upgrade and you don't depend on the type folio, I think that the Remarkable Paper Pure makes sense, but be prepared that it won't feel as exclusive and as exquisite like a object of iteration and object of prestige as the Remarkable 2 did and Remarkable Paper Pro did as well. This is a departure and it doesn't feel like it. It feels cheaper. So you have to be prepared for that, and you have to be honest with yourself as well. What is it truly that made Remarkable 2, for example, stand out for you? Was it that it's a point of adoration and that it's an object that you like to look at, that you like that people ask you about it and it looks so nice, that it's thin, it's metal, and it's glass, and it's all of that? And if that's something that carried significant amount of weight for you as a point of, whether you want the device or not, It's an important point of consideration with the paper pure because you are not going to really get that. So overall, can I recommend Remarkable Paper Pure? For those who are pure about their writing needs and staying in Remarkable type of field, yes, I think that it's an easy recommendation and an easy upgrade from Remarkable 2. However, you have to fall within these kind of guidelines and limitations that I've talked about. If any of these things actually falls outside of your point of category, you will be disappointed. Unfortunately for Remarkable, there are plenty of other very serious contenders out there for a very, very similar price point. And that puts the Remarkable Paper Pure in a position that's not really like, okay, done deal, this is a success. I think that it's gonna have a little bit of a battle to kind of carve its area of existence in an identity there. And I hope that it does, because it does genuinely have good things to offer, and I truly believe that this is a good workhorse type of a device if it's built well and if it lasts. That's another thing that we don't know yet. We'll see after a bit of time how it actually proves to be the build quality. And the whole point of the plastic build is it should be more durable. And if it's not, then the whole thing kind of falls apart, because why would you then have all of that if it's still as fragile and unreliable as maybe Remarkable 2 was? That's basically Remarkable Paper Pure now after a couple of weeks of living with it, using it, and yeah, working with it. What are your thoughts? I'm interested to hear. And what are your positives that you see about the device? What are the negatives that you see of the device? And I'm especially kind of interested to hear for those who are interested to order it and would want to order it, like what are you upgrading from? And for those who are on the fence and are thinking like this or something else, what is the other thing that you are weighing the Paper Pure against? Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!